Welcome to Forensic Friday,
where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. Hi, forensic friends.
Hello.
As promised, we're going to talk a little bit more about Rebecca White. We did a little announcement on socials earlier that we were going to talk about this case. We dug into it a little bit. So 2 days ago, on January 19th, Michael Smith went into Rebecca White's therapy office in Orange County, Florida, during an evening therapy session that she was in with someone else. This was not a scheduled appointment. He was not there to see her for anything planned. He demanded to see her immediately. She asked him to leave, and Smith attacked her with a knife, stabbing her and another client who was present, who she was actually seeing for a session. And he stabbed both Rebecca, this other client, and then Rebecca, unfortunately, later died from her injuries. The client who intervened called 911, survived after emergency surgery and is expected to be okay. The other person, Michael Smith, the attacker, died by suicide sometime between the attack and when he was found on the morning of the 20th. So that's kind of what happened. This was not random. This was not a random person who wandered in. Michael Smith was a former client of Rebecca White's. We know that. Rebecca White's 44 years old. And yeah, so I mean it's a former client. We also know, and we'll get into this in a few minutes, but Rebecca White's a forensic therapist like Nat and I. And Nat's going to get into a little bit more history of this client, Michael Smith.
Yeah, super sad situation. Michael Smith had a pretty extensive history of severe violent sexual offenses. He, in 2003, assaulted a teenager in Palm Beach County, where he was convicted of kidnapping, burglary, and sexual battery. During that offense, he forced entry into a woman's home at knife point. So he does. I was thinking about this earlier. Sorry, tangent.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of deaths by stabbing that we've covered, which is just interesting. Sorry. So, forced entry into a woman's home at knife point, restrained her, and sexually assaulted her before she was able to escape. He served nearly 2 decades in prison and was registered as a sex offender following his release. Sexual violent histories tend to involve patterns of entitlement, which Janine and I have talked about some in past cases, boundary violation, grievance-based thinking, which I believe this is what that is, and Janine's probably, I think, going to get into some of that. We don't fully know the whole story yet, but we do believe that there was a grievance-based thinking for him, and hostility towards limits. So obviously violates boundaries, so does not like limitations on behaviors or anything like that. Those patterns do not automatically make someone violent, but they do increase the risk when combined with perceived rejection or loss of control. And as we've talked about the work that we do, right, a lot of domestic violence, all of domestic violence is power and control based. We are not a part of the SOMB, which is Sex Offender Management Board. We are the part of the DVOMB, Domestic Violence Offender Management Board. But there's a lot of overlap. So Janine's going to get more into that.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap. And one of the things that's kind of interesting about that is for a long time, we've gone back and forth, kind of as a body of therapists between, our clients, domestic violence clients, are not typically sex offenders. Some of them are, but that's not the majority by any stretch
Mhm.
in the legal sense, meaning they're not on
Correct.
registries and that kind of thing. But there's a lot of sexual offending behavior that happens in intimate partner relationships, marital
Yep.
rape, that kind of stuff. So
Yep.
we do deal with entitlement, and all of these kinds of things within the domestic violence realm, but we don't get the severity of the of stranger assaults or pedophilia, that kind of stuff. Nat and I don't work in that domain. And so this particular therapist, Rebecca White, was a forensic therapist. And so this one shook me up. I'm not going to lie, this one has shaken me up a little bit. One of the things I say to our new baby therapists all the time to try to put their little hearts at ease, and Nat's heard me say this probably 10 times. I don't know. I probably said this at her orientation years ago.
Mm-hmm.
People don't attack their therapists. You
Mm-hmm.
almost never hear of this, almost never.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because we are a lot of times a sacred space for people. And this
Mm-hmm.
is true even in the forensic realm where we have to have really hard conversations, set hard limits. I mean, I can't think of many times this has happened. It's happened a few times, but not often. And the times I can think of have typically been a psychotic episode, something like that. And it's actually been psychiatrists, a few of the cases I know about. This is highly unusual, but the part that shook me up is I think it brings me back to the complexities of this work and the inherent danger of this work that I try not to think about. The people that love me try not to think about this. Our
Mm-hmm.
husbands joke, Preston and Garrett joke that, their money's on us. Like, we're tough chicks. We're strong. We can communicate well. We
Mm-hmm.
treat our clients with a lot of respect. But the people that we see are high risk by nature. They've been violent before,
Mm-hmm.
and they are likely to be violent again. I mean, that's the risk of recidivism that we are literally trying to reduce with them in our office.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that kind of breaks my heart about this is here's this person who showed up and just wanted to talk to her and thought he should have been able to do that right then. We don't know what about. We have no idea. But she likely tried.
Mm.
She likely tried. She tried to
To
redirect
like
him,
talk him down, you mean?
talk him down, redirect him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure told him he needed to leave. But even in that moment, I just believe because I know us as a field, there probably was a posture of firm
Mm-hmm.
boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
but kindness and with an approachable office. And a couple of other things I'd like to say about this. This is a woman seeing well, the client that she's working with, she was seeing a man in his mid 30s, the one who was attending. We have no idea what he was in therapy for. He could be there because he is the nicest man on earth and just wants to be 10% nicer. We literally
Right,
do not
right.
know. But she was in a therapy session at 9 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
She has a history of working as a forensic therapist. We don't know in that moment what happened. The
Mm-hmm.
client that she was with at 9 p.m., and Nat and I are used to those hours, man. I used to
Mm-hmm.
work till 9:30, 10 o'clock at night
Mm-hmm.
regularly every
Mm-hmm.
week. She's meeting with a man, probably alone,
Mm-hmm.
about whatever. And this other man comes in, and now you have a female therapist in this space with a man who has shown up, a
Mm-hmm.
man in her office who is her client, who has nothing to do with this other man,
Mm-hmm.
probably knows nothing about what's going on between them. And that poor man tried to help, called 911, and I'll bet you anything we're going to find out that that man really did try to help this woman. He could have run
Yeah,
out the door. He's a man. Okay, he
right.
might have gotten stabbed once, but he might have been able to shove this guy and get out and just leave this man to do what he was going to do and call 911 from the parking lot.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, this man probably tried to help, and he did call 911. And
Mm-hmm.
she was not dead, from what I read, was not dead when they got there. She died on the way to the hospital. But
Right.
he gave her some kind of a chance, even by calling 911.
Yeah.
So whoever that man is, he also represents something tender for me,
Mm-hmm.
because the men in our spaces, like 99% of them,
Mm-hmm.
actually, I believe oh, now I'm tearing up. I don't tear up very often.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly not here. Would put themselves
Mm-hmm.
in danger, I believe, to protect us,
Mm-hmm.
and have indicated that they would. I've had a group of men keep me safe before from a
Mm-hmm.
man who did come and want to do something bad, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just feel for that man and his family too, that here he is, he's just having his therapy session.
Mm-hmm.
And because of something that had nothing to do with him,
Mm-hmm.
he gets stabbed and pulled into this traumatic,
Mm-hmm.
horrifying thing. I think about all of the clients who lost their therapist, and that's a really sacred, special connection.
Mm-hmm.
All of it sucks. And then this client who probably back in the day, Rebecca White held hope for and tried to work with, even though this is a heinous person walking around. I got to be honest with you. Like, I don't work with people who were in prison for 20 years for breaking into someone's house and raping them. That is not my population. I work with really high risk stuff, but that's extra.
Mm-hmm.
She likely held hope, treated him with kindness, and tried to work with him at some point in the past. And so
Yeah.
that just, all of it just breaks my heart. And I think about all the clinical therapists who, we don't have security like the courts that we work with. And so I've had calls from probation where they say, "Hey, Janine, can you get this guy in? He blew up at probation and we have extra security now when he comes." And I'm like, "Sure." Also, we don't have a whole security team in the front door like they do in the courthouse. When you walk into a courthouse, you go through a metal detector and there's layers of security, and we have some security measures, but
Mm-hmm.
quite frankly, therapists are really, really vulnerable. They're just vulnerable. They're
Yeah.
vulnerable legally, they're
Yeah.
vulnerable physically,
Mm-hmm.
and even emotionally when I think about some of our higher risk folks. So
Yeah.
it's just this breaks my heart.
Yeah. No,
I'm a
this was a
little
sad.
heartbroken.
I mean, they're all sad, the cases we cover, but this one hits closer to home for us because of the work we do.
She's a forensic sister. She's somebody that we would have sat with
Mm-hmm.
in a training. She's somebody we would have seen at a conference. And so it just hits really, really close to home for me
Yeah.
and my family, my team.
Yeah.
I even think about you, and Nat and I are two people who people do look to in a crisis because of our
Mm-hmm.
experience. And I have thought occasionally about this, but I try not to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got me thinking a lot. I can
I
say that.
know. I know. Yeah, I will say, I think what's interesting is, and we don't know the full story yet, but
Mm-mm.
my guess is she was probably not seeing this client anymore.
Mhm.
Probably terminated with him.
Mhm.
And so I think that's an important process to talk about when it comes to this, right? So like, and when we say terminate, it means, like we are ending our therapeutic relationship and time together.
It always sounds hella dramatic. I
I
remember when I first heard
know.
that, I'm like, termination? Can we say discharge? What do we say?
I know discharge is also kind of
It
an
is really
interesting word.
weird.
But
Yes.
um but it's interesting because like terminating clients or completing clients or not completing clients but still terminating, it's never really a neutral thing,
Mm-mm.
right? And so what I mean by that is termination always carries meaning and impact for at least one person involved. A lot of times too. I know when I've completed clients, whether court ordered or voluntary, there's kind of a grieving process because you both have been a part of each other's lives, right? I mean,
Uh,
we don't speak much about our life with them, but we get to know their lives really well. And so there is, yeah, there it just has a lot of emotion involved and it can activate feelings interpretations and power dynamics, whether that's intended or not, right? So in a clinical setting, that can mean it could trigger abandonment, rejection, or something failed. It can feel like a loss. I know for me, sometimes I think about some of my clients that I've completed, again, whether court ordered or voluntary. And I think about them sometimes and I'm like, man, I just hope they're doing really well. I hope they're doing well, but there's a little bit of a loss there, right? It's a change in relationship.
Don't you wish, Nat, that they knew how much we carry them with us? We carry them
Yeah.
with us. We think about them. We wonder how
hmm
they're doing. We even hard terminations too. Man, I hope they're okay. I hope they got what they needed eventually.
hmm And then in the court ordered system, sorry, not system, in court ordered treatment, someone's experience can be like when they experience getting terminated, it can feel like a control or punishment, um, which, you know, this may have involved some of that for him, right?
Yeah.
And it can reinforce past relationship traumas, abandonment wounding, like I said before, a lot of things. I got off on a tangent. Closure. We did a whole episode on closure.
It's so good.
It is so good. I think when terminations are done well, right, there is some level of closure there. And I'm not saying, well, like, let's talk about court ordered for a minute. If a termination is done well and the client was unsuccessful, there's still a level of closure, right?
Yeah.
There are boundaries put in place. I had to send an email today for one of our other clinicians because she kept getting blown up. And I emailed the person and said, you will no longer be talking to that clinician. You are talking to me now, right?
Right.
That is closure between that clinician and that client,
Yeah.
right? Um, and like you said, a lot of times you and I have to step into some of these high risk situations, which, you and I do, I think, relatively comfortably. But, you
Mhm.
know, like when I read cases like this, and like you said, this rarely happens. So when it does, it's like, oh no, you look at people a little differently,
Well, and
you know?
we've long advocated for co-therapy, and now the board requires it for groups of certain sizes, but we were
Yeah.
way out in front of that trend because
Yeah.
I like
Because
doing this
of
with you
safety.
because
Yep.
of safety. Because, well, I like you. That's number one. Number one, I like
hmm
you and I prefer to work with you, period.
Yes.
But
Yes.
also, and more importantly, clinically, it is so good to have a second
hmm
set of eyes, a second person, a personality in the room who's helping to manage
hmm
a
hmm
group of people or to meet with a high risk client. And so Nat and I quite literally have each other's backs, even in
hmm
a scenario like this. If something like this happens, I mean, our clinicians don't work alone super late at night. We've tried really hard to work that out so that doesn't happen because
hmm
we didn't have that luxury. I worked alone all the
Mm-mm.
time late at night.
Oh, I closed a Denver office at 9 p.m. by
Yep.
myself
So I mean, Nat and I've had
with
that
no security.
experience.
I didn't
No,
have a
no,
panic
not
button.
even sometimes doors that locked
Yeah, I didn't have a panic
consistently.
button like I have here.
No, we didn't have the
So,
help that we have now. We have more
you know,
security now than we
yes.
did. Honestly, when I think about that, Nat, it's, I am comforted by your presence. That's the truth. And I think you are by mine.
Mhm.
You should be because I will hit them like a spider monkey. Like they will not know what hit them. I'm telling you right now. But, we take that really seriously. We take our safety
Mhm.
seriously. And still,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
very hard in a situation like this when we're terminating, when we're giving a message that people don't want, when they don't like what's happening. We get quote unquote blown up. That's literally what we say. Like
Yeah.
they're blowing up my phone, they're blowing up my email, they're blowing up
Well,
probation,
and
whatever.
think of it this way too. So one of the things you and I always talk about with victim advocates in
Always.
domestic violent relationships is when someone's getting ready to leave or when they
Mhm.
do leave, that's the highest risk of their safety, right? So think of it in clinical terms. My guess is Rebecca terminated with this client, right? He escalates because now he has no control, right? It's a similar concept. And so I even think of our work. And when we unsuccessfully discharge someone or terminate with someone, I feel a little more on guard, right? I feel a little bit more protective of myself and my team. And I probably walk around more like a trucker when that happens than when someone completes successfully. But I mean, I have an example that you know about when I first started in this field. And guys, this wasn't even a DV situation. It was an anger management group that I ran.
Those are sometimes wilder anyway, but
It
yes.
was way more wild than any of my DV groups I've run. But I took this group over, and this individual scared the entire group, including the facilitator before me. And I remember I took this group over, and this guy was pretty, I mean, it was abusive what he was doing to me and how he tried to control the group. And so I said, and he was supposed to quote unquote complete in 4 weeks. And I was like, there's no way on my license that this guy is going to complete. There's no way. And so I told him the news. He referred to it as very inappropriate terms, and I'm not going to repeat it.
Not repeatable.
Yeah, not repeatable. And then I just said, "Hey, dude, like, I, if you're not going to take this very generous offer that I'm offering you, so that you can hopefully complete at some point successfully, we have to terminate." And I felt my risk go up. I was closing an office down. That was the latest group that night. And I'll be honest, my husband and my dad sat in that parking lot every night for 4 weeks at night to make sure that I got out of there safely. And I was scared. I was scared of this individual because I knew what his case was. And with how he spoke to me directly, it was scary. And so when I think of and it should be implied, I obviously terminated his treatment unsuccessfully, which is why I was scared of him.
To do the ethical thing sometimes puts us in harm's way.
Yes, and that's the only time I've ever actually been scared of a client. And I think it's just important to take note of this, right? Like I hate that Rebecca was working that late. I don't know if she was alone in the building.
Mm-mm.
I do know people who also worked in the building were very concerned about the lack of security and how this individual got in. But this is a big deal. And as I stated, right, she probably terminated, which meant risk went up and he targeted her.
We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Southeast Counseling Center. Southeast Counseling Center is a 501c3 nonprofit mental health provider right here in Parker, Colorado, conveniently located just off major highways. We serve the whole family, from play therapy for kids to couples and family therapy, trauma treatment, psychological testing, and specialized groups. Access matters. That's why Southeast Counseling Center accepts Medicaid, TriWest, and victim compensation, and also offers a community subsidy program to help people who fall in the gap between Medicaid and traditional insurance coverage. And because we're a nonprofit, every dollar donated by the community goes directly towards providing treatment services for people who need help. Prefer to meet at home? Telehealth is available statewide, so anyone in Colorado can access our services. To get started, call 720-842-5553 or fill out our secure web inquiry form at secounseling.org. Southeast Counseling Center, care that is accessible, compassionate, and rooted in the community.
Yeah. Well, and now I appreciate you sharing that. And I have one story I want to add because I think this is just mulling around in my brain, and I shared it in one of our episodes and I can't remember which one, but I've only truly had someone that I think was going to hurt me one time. And I've been called to see you next Tuesday. I mean, we've had things happen. It's not, I mean, that's honestly like not that unusual to be mistreated verbally, etc. And actually, we can typically work through that with a client and land somewhere adaptive. It's kind of amazing. But I did have one night in a group where a man dropped meth in the office building, and there was a group happening, and no one would admit it. And I did tell him eventually, that I thought it was his, and that I was going to communicate with probation, and we were going to come up with a plan because he needed something different. I didn't say you're going to jail or anything terrible. I just said we're going to have to figure this out. And he didn't admit it, but he said, I feel like you think I did it. And I was alone in the office. It was 9:45-ish when I got all the group members out, because they always have questions, the groups, and at 9:30 he hung out for a little bit. I finally got everybody out, and that particular night I realized I should probably lock the front door, and I didn't usually do that, to be honest, because I wasn't like in a dangerous part of town or anything, but I would just leave it unlocked. And I knew there was something that went all through me. I need to lock that door. And not 15 minutes later, as I'm packing my bag up, I hear banging on the front door. So now it's 10, which is typically when I would leave, 10 o'clock at night by myself. Okay. And there's banging on the door, and I see this man, and I realize he thinks I'm going to tell probation I'm the only one that knows. And I believe he looked like he was under the influence of meth, which is a whole nother risk factor.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And I'm so scared. And I called 911, and I turned off all the lights so he couldn't see where I was in case he had a gun. And I hid in a back office, but with the door cracked so I could see. Thankfully, he didn't break through the glass of the doors, but he was just banging, banging, banging on the door. And I was really scared. The cops got there really fast, and they pulled into the parking lot, and he skedaddled when he saw the cops.
Oh, I bet he did.
Partially because he was high on meth, probably had.
He's like, bye-bye.
Exactly. So he gets out, and the cops came to the door, and I bring them in, and I talk to them. So by the time I'm walking out with the cops, it is 10:45 at night. I remember looking at the clock, and I go out there, and I look to the right, and there are probably, of my 12 group members, 9 of them are standing there.
That's sweet. Because I knew something was sketchy.
And they stayed there even when the cops came, which really scares the
They're like, whatever.
And I was like,
well,
guys, what
here's
are
the
you
thing.
doing? And they said, we knew he was going to come back. We knew he was going to get high, and we knew he was going to come back.
Yeah.
And we weren't going to leave you alone.
Those 9 people had nothing to hide.
Nope.
They were doing what they needed to be doing.
Would they have protected me if he broke the glass on that door? I believe they would have.
100%. Yes.
But it meant the world to me. And to those men who waited, I think we're going to find that this man, regardless of his background, whoever the survivor is, and he should be entitled to his privacy, but I doubt he'll get it. It'll come out at some point somehow. I believe that this man, even in just calling 911, put himself in the way and was injured badly. And I just think about that. I think about the dichotomy of one of the clients coming to hurt me. I believe they were going to hurt me. I'm literally yelling through the door, like, I already told probation, like, I'm trying to communicate. They know, like, I get out to you. If you hurt me, they know it's you. Like, I'm letting him know, and he wouldn't stop. Yeah. When I think back on that, it's the goodness of the majority that keep us doing this work. And she knew that. She knew that. That's why she did the work, but it cost her everything.
Literally. Yep.
So afterwards, I mentioned Michael Smith was found dead by suicide the next morning. We don't know much about that. But, we're kind of left with what we've been talking about, our vulnerability. This poor client, uninvolved in what happened between the therapist and her former client, who was injured, and then a therapist killed doing her job, which is not something we see very often. So, even having the empathy that we have for this population, it's addictive. Everybody I know who comes into this work stays in this work because it's so, by and large, so rewarding, unbelievably rewarding. And there's so many good days. There's hard days, but there's also so many good days and interesting, hilarious, you can't make this shit up kind of days that keep us doing this work. But also one of the things Nat and I are really, really, really passionate about is counselor education and working with high-risk clients. And we're doing some writing together, so stay tuned for that. But this is the kind of stuff that we're thinking about is what do we miss? Why do these things happen? How do we protect people and better give people a chance to be better, but also protect the community, therapists, other clients, and it's super complex.
Super complex. You know, I'll end us with this. I think when it comes to this work, I love what it says here. Therapist safety is not fear-based, right? If we do this work and fear our clients, we'll burn out within less than a year.
100%.
Right? So you can't go into this. You can't be any type of therapist if you're scared of your people, right?
Oh, you're not an
Especially,
effective therapist if you're
right.
scared of your clients. That's right.
Especially in the court-ordered clientele. Rebecca White was not a reckless therapist. She was a phenomenal therapist, right? She did this work because she cared. I always say, man, the therapists who work with sex offenders, and I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm not trying to be judgmental because I know there's so many things that are going on.
Stories, just like DV. Everybody
Just like
has a
DV.
picture of DV. Everybody has a picture of sexual offending, but there's people within all of it.
Yes, but I will say I think it takes a really skilled clinician to work with SO offenders.
Exceptional clinicians.
Clinicians. And Rebecca White was one of those. So, you know, at the end of the day, I think reading cases like this, hearing cases like this can really impact and actually create a fear-based dynamic for therapists. But my encouragement to all other clinicians out there, especially court-ordered clinicians, is, you know, let's take this story and grieve with each other and, you know, pray and think about Rebecca White's family and also step into this work that much harder with that much more force and that much more care because they need that in order to get better.
Yes, and our society depends on this work. Families depend on it. The community depends on it. Someone has to do it. And to be frank, not unlike teachers and other professions, like it takes people to do this work. It's predominantly female. We know some wonderful male therapists in this work, but it is female. It's a female-dominated industry. It's an underpaid industry. We don't have security. And to be really honest, I have a feeling, and we don't know, this is pure conjecture. But I'm wondering if that client didn't call 911 and that wasn't the thing that possibly pushed this into another domain in terms of violence, because one of the best weapons we have in the field is our ability to talk. And I haven't met a client yet that I can't de-escalate and get to leave peacefully.
Unless they're on meth.
And this man, but even then, we were able to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I believe if he'd come through the glass, all bets were off, right? But most of the time, we can de-escalate someone enough to get them to leave. That combination of things, nobody made a mistake, but that combination of escalations that happened led to this horrific thing. And I don't know about you, Nat, but it leaves me feeling just even more motivated to try to help. Like you said, I think we have to lean in really hard. Really hard. In honor of her work.
Yeah. And don't be scared.
You can't be scared. You can't play scared.
Don't play
That's the other
scared.
thing I
If you
tell my
are
interns.
scared, call your supervisor.
Call your soup.
Right. And you know me. I mean, one of my supervisees runs one of our latest groups. I will sit with him any day he doesn't have a second clinician in there. I will sacrifice my evening as a 10-year clinician and supervisor. All supervisors should do this, by the way.
Should do this. Yes.
I will sit in there happily with him and run group. And if I can't sit in his group, it's because I'm usually seeing a client just as late.
Well, yeah, I don't think we should have entry-level clinicians. That's not what Rebecca White was. But there's a lot of this in the field of entry-level clinicians working super late by themselves at night in buildings that are not secure, policies that are not secure. It just breaks my heart. Absolutely breaks my heart. And we're going to keep doing the work, Nat.
Yep.
And
I want all the other therapists out there to lean into this. If you need a little extra support, DM us. We'll be happy
DM us if you need an atta-girl.
Yeah, we got you. Or atta-boy, atta-girl, atta-boy,
atta-girl,
atta-man,
and we're
whatever.
Yes, and we are doing that for each other. Nat and I will cheer each other on. We appreciate y'all so much, and thanks for listening.
We love you, as always.
Bye, forensic friends. I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening, and join us next week for more Crime, Psychology, and Heart.